My late-night reading addiction was kicking in. I craved one of those quick-burn stories from Kindle Vella. With trembling hands, I unlocked my phone. The screen was filled with 3 app icons, all for the same reading platform: red, green, and gold. I froze. I was sure I'd only ever downloaded the one standard app. My finger hovered over the screen for a few seconds before tapping the familiar red icon. This wasn't right. The interface was completely different. I backed out and tapped the green one next to it. The light from the screen was a little harsh. I saw the content inside and instantly understood. This was the unfiltered, behind-the-firewall version, which meant the gold icon was. I'd been pulled into the book just because I'd left a comment saying, "Just put me in for one scene, coach." And just like that, I was in the world of the story. And I wasn't even the damn protagonist. I didn't even score a supporting male role. I was just a nobody forced to watch the main character, Caleb, live the high life while I had jack squat. The plot had already progressed to the wedding day of the female lead's childhood sweetheart, Ethan. The main characters, Caleb and Isabella, were sitting at a table in the banquet hall, enjoying the feast. And me? I was on the sidelines, serving them, bussing tables and carrying plates. The whole wedding was a small affair. Only 16 tables. When the officiant told the couple to exchange rings, I saw Ethan hesitate for a split second. His eyes darted toward Isabella, who was busy peeling a shrimp. As if sensing his gaze, she looked up, and their eyes met. Then, without missing a beat, she popped the shrimp into Caleb's mouth. Ethan's hesitation vanished. He took his bride's hand and slid the ring onto her finger. The bride was in her 40s, with the comfortable look of old money. I'd heard she was a wealthy widow who'd taken a shine to Ethan because he looked like her first love, the one that got away. A classic stand-in romance. To his credit, Ethan played the part well, even treating the widow's 2 children as his own. The moment the ring was on her finger, a polite, measured applause filled the room. After the wedding, the guests dispersed. Ethan stood alone at the hotel entrance, the neon lights casting a lonely shadow across his face. The wealthy widow had left earlier, saying she had something to attend to. I'd overheard it while clearing a table. On my way home from my shift, I ran into Caleb and Isabella again. They were walking hand in hand, laughing and talking. A moment later, they ducked into a small, wooded park. Damn it. Sucked into a story, and I'm still the third wheel. Before long, a series of muffled, rhythmic sounds drifted from the trees. Back in my tiny rental apartment, a news notification lit up my phone. It was about Ethan's new wife, the widow, Victoria. Paparazzi had snapped photos of her on her wedding night at the airport, picking someone up. No wonder Ethan looked so miserable. His new wife was off meeting an old flame. The next day, Victoria showed up at our hotel's coffee shop, supposedly for afternoon tea. Coincidentally, I'd been temporarily reassigned to work the coffee bar. It wasn't long before the man from the airport appeared. "Julian, you're here," Victoria said, standing to greet him. Julian was tall and impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, with a calm, confident air about him. As he sat down, his gaze swept in my direction. I immediately looked down, pretending to be engrossed in polishing a coffee cup. "Have you been waiting long?" Julian's voice was smooth. "No, I just got here myself," Victoria said with a small smile, gently stirring her coffee. "I'm sorry for making you wait." "It's fine. What did you want to see me about?" Julian didn't answer directly. He looked around the cafe and remarked, "I can't believe how much things have changed back home." His eyes scanned the room again. I ducked my head lower. "I'm back for good this time." Julian's voice dropped. "Victoria, I've missed you and the children." Victoria's hand stopped stirring. From behind the counter, I felt the air grow heavy. "Julian, this isn't the time for that," she said softly. "Why not?" He leaned forward. "I know you resent me for leaving the country back then, but I'm back now. And," he paused, "the children need me. I'm their biological father, after all." Here it comes. The classic, "I missed your youth, but I don't want to miss your menopause" speech. Victoria was silent for a long moment before finally speaking, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "I'm married." "Married?" Just then, my manager called me away. I had to deliver some desserts to a private suite upstairs. When I pushed the cart to the suite and knocked, I heard a brief flurry of panicked movement from inside before a voice called out, "Come in." I pushed the cart into the room. Holy crap, what are the odds? Inside were the main character, Caleb, the female lead, Isabella, and the second female lead, Chloe. All 3 of them looked disheveled, their clothes slightly askew. The way Isabella and Chloe were looking at Caleb, they were practically undressing him with their eyes. Figures. Not my scene either. I cursed silently. As I arranged the desserts on the table, I caught a glimpse of the women's legs. You have no idea of the raw power in the way their stockings dug into their thighs. After leaving the suite, I leaned against the wall in the hallway and took a deep breath. The main character in this book had it made. That weekend, I met up with my friend Mark for dinner. He was the first real friend I'd made in this story world. We picked a table by the window overlooking the Sound. Soon, the famous Puget Sound geoduck sashimi I'd ordered was placed in the center of the table. Mark, ever the skeptic, had to try it. He picked up a piece with his chopsticks and put it in his mouth. His expression soured immediately. "Owen, this thing died in vain," he grimaced. "You picked it, genius," I said, shrugging helplessly. "Must be the chef." "We came to the wrong place," Mark muttered to himself. "A dish this famous can't possibly be this bad." Just then, a voice cut in. "Excuse me, gentlemen." Mark and I turned our heads in unison. "Can we help you?" I asked. The man said, "My companion would really like to sit here. I was hoping we could work something out." Mark scoffed. "Work something out? What's there to work out? We picked this spot for the view, and our food just got here. Perhaps I can persuade you." The man reached into a bag and pulled out a thick stack of cash. Had to be at least 20 grand, and slid it across the table toward us. I shot out of my seat and grabbed his hand. "Sir, your heartfelt sincerity has moved me deeply. From this moment on, this table is yours." Mark and I took the money and moved to a table in the corner. As we left, I faintly heard the man call out a name. "Sophie." "You gotta be kidding me. That's Sophie, the female lead's best friend in the book." I shifted my new seat to be a little closer. "Damien, have you heard about Victoria?" Sophie asked in a low voice. Heard a little something. They're saying her ex, Julian, moved into her house under the guise of taking care of the kids. And her new husband, the boy toy, is so jealous he's been acting out constantly, making a fool of himself. I heard the ex even managed to get him to fall into the pool. "Yeah, I'm not so optimistic about that May-December romance anymore," Damien said, holding court. "And what about you? I hear you still haven't given up on Isabella," Sophie said sarcastically. "Isabella is gorgeous, with a killer body. Who wouldn't want her?" Damien replied playfully. "Watch it. She's married now." "I know. A goal is always sweeter when there's a goalie." On my third day back at the hotel, I ran into Ethan. He was standing in the shadows of the employee service corridor on the phone. "Did you find her?" "Which room?" His voice was raw, like shredded vocal cords. I flattened myself against the wall and crept closer, straining to hear. "Okay, I've got it." Ethan hung up, his fist clenched so tight his knuckles were white. He spun around abruptly and nearly collided with me. Honestly, I was curious. After all, the novel's protagonist was Caleb. His story was a non-stop feast. Subplots like this one were usually glossed over by the author in a single sentence. And from what I knew of the genre, things weren't going to end well for Ethan. That evening, Caleb brought Isabella and Chloe to the hotel to get a room. And what do you know, I was the one assigned to take a room service order up to the penthouse. As the three of them were entering the presidential suite, Chloe's high heel buckled. Caleb, one arm around each of them, steadied her. I kept my head down, pushing the cart. I heard Isabella laugh lightly. "Chloe, you did that on purpose, didn't you?" Chloe's voice was syrupy sweet. "Well, Caleb is so strong. Isn't he, is he?" Caleb called me over and stuffed a few bills into my hand. "Come back in 2 hours and bring a bottle of champagne." As the door closed, I caught a glimpse of the three of them heading into the bathroom together. I knew this scene. The first time I read this part of the book, the description kept me up all night. After finishing my delivery, I was heading downstairs when I ran into Ethan again in the elevator. His eyes were red, like he'd been crying. I delivered Caleb's champagne to the presidential suite right on time. When Caleb opened the door, he was wearing a bathrobe. I could hear the sounds of 2 women laughing and splashing inside. He took the bottle and pressed another tip into my hand. "Bring breakfast for 3 tomorrow morning." I nodded and left. That weekend, Mar dragged me to a new barbecue joint. We had just sat down when I heard a familiar laugh. Not far from us, Victoria and Julian were sitting with their 2 kids. They looked like a perfect family. Suddenly, Ethan appeared a short distance away, holding a cake box. The light in his eyes instantly dimmed. "What are you staring at?" Mark nudged me. "Your brisket burn ends are getting cold." I pulled my gaze away and took a bite. They were a bit dry, probably sat out too long. Based on the book's timeline, the relationship between Ethan and Victoria was about to hit its climax. I was ready. Mark borrowed a small cargo van. I bribed the new security guard at Victoria's gated community with 2 cartons of premium cigarettes. We smoothly drove the van to a spot with a clear view of the villa's front door. The residential complex was eerily quiet in the dead of night. I huddled in the driver's seat, gnawing on a sandwich and watching the windows of the luxurious villa. Sure enough, before the sun was even up, Ethan started hauling out piles of stuff, dumping it all into a large metal bin nearby. It was everything that constituted their shared memories, all the gifts Victoria had ever given him. Then, he lit a match and set it all on fire. As soon as he was gone, Mark and I grabbed fire extinguishers and rushed over. After a frantic rescue operation, we salvaged a collection of designer watches, gemstone cufflinks, necklaces, and more. We left the damaged items behind. It was a massive windfall. After we had everything appraised, we couldn't believe the numbers. It was worth nearly $1 million. You gotta love the absurd wealth in these romance novels. We split it 50-50 on the spot. The money took a huge weight off my shoulders. After getting some rest, we decided to check out a high-end private club and see how the other half lived. Next group, change them out again. Number 17, you can go. The rest of you stay. Dressed in his new designer clothes, Mark sat with his legs crossed in the private room, pointing and choosing like a king. When we woke up the next day, we vehemently condemned our own decadent behavior, while clutching our aching backs and ordering 2 chicken wraps at a KFC. We decided we needed to inject some positivity into our lives and planned a trip to Miami. Day 1 in Miami, yacht party. Day 2 in Miami, yacht party. Day 3 in Miami, yacht party. Day 7 in Miami. No more. I can't, Mark said, waving his hands in defeat. No more debauchery today. I seriously can't take it. How about we go inland? Check out some of the small towns around here. I suggested. My legs feel like jelly, he grumbled. And so, we spent the next month recuperating in our hotel with only the occasional yacht party. On the day we were scheduled to leave Miami, as luck would have it, we passed by a courtyard and saw Victoria. She was holding her 2 kids by the hand, confronting Ethan. I guess Ethan had moved here to live a quiet life, only to have Victoria track him down. This had all the makings of the classic groveling ex trope. Suddenly, I heard a line straight out of the script. I don't love you anymore. Yes, this is the stuff. Daddy, don't call me daddy. I'm not your father. Didn't you say I was just a help? Honey, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. The kids need you. We almost missed our flight from all the drama watching, but at least I got to witness the legendary scene in person. 3 days after returning to Seattle, I went to the hotel and handed in my resignation. With money in my pocket, I could finally stand up straight. No more carrying plates and watching other people live out their soap opera lives. Mark used a share of the money to buy a small bar, and I went to help him out for a few days. The location was terrible, but the rent was cheap. There were barely any customers. I told him he should just cut his losses, but he wouldn't listen. Seeing the complete lack of foot traffic, I started treating the bar like my own private karaoke room. One day, I was really getting into a song when unexpectedly, wave after wave of customers started pouring in. Mark was instantly swamped. It took me a while to figure out what was going on. Mark had posted a video of me singing online. I had gone viral. I couldn't believe it. Even in a novel, I was making a living by being a cover artist for songs that didn't exist here. The bar became a trendy spot for social media check-ins. After I finished a song, the applause was deafening. I scanned the crowd and saw a few familiar faces. The lighting was dim, but Caleb's table was hard to miss. Isabella and Chloe were pressed up against him on either side. Damien's eyes were practically glued to Isabella, while Sophie had a playful, amused look on her face. I put down my guitar, gave the crowd a wave, and started to slip away. Hey man, you're pretty good. How about another one? A voice called out. It was Caleb. Instantly, the rest of the crowd joined in. One more. I held my guitar, looking at the rowdy audience. Caleb's table was the most enthusiastic. Sophie caught my eye and gave me a little wink. She must have recognized me. Damien was giving me a dark look, his thoughts unreadable. All right, one more then. I strummed the guitar, the opening chords of a song this world had never heard filling the room. As I sang, I deliberately glanced over at Damien. Finally made this decision. Don't care what other people say, as long as you feel the same way. Love really takes courage. To face all the rumors and whispers. Just one look of certainty from you, and my love has meaning. We all need courage. When I finished, the bar was silent for 2 seconds. Then it erupted in even louder applause and whistles. Only Damien's expression had turned even fouler. Had he figured out I was singing it to mock him and stir the pot? I didn't linger. I put the guitar down and slipped backstage. Mark rushed over, phone practically shoved in my face. Owen, look, you're trending again. A bunch of talent agencies are in my DMs. I push his phone away. Chill out. I just want a quiet life. Quiet? You're an influencer now, Mark whispered. You know what Isabella just asked me? She asked if you'd be interested in playing at her family's corporate gala. Name your price. I kept wiping down my guitar, not responding. The next afternoon, I got to the bar to open up and saw Sophie sitting under an umbrella at one of the outdoor tables. 2 cups of coffee were in front of her. She saw me and waved. Looking for me? I asked, walking over and sitting down. Can't I be? Sophie pushed one of the coffees toward me. You're Owen, right? That song you sang last night, Courage, it was beautiful. Her eyes were shining. Just messing around, I said, taking a sip of the coffee. I winced internally. Way too much sugar. Sickeningly sweet. She rested her chin on her hand, studying me with a curious gaze. Just messing around gets you to that level? Could you sing it for me again? She blinked innocently. Now. I glanced at the still-closed bar. Maybe tonight. It'd be a noise complaint right now. Sophie smiled, didn't push it, and changed the subject. This place is pretty out of the way. How'd you find it? A friend's place. Just helping out, I said curtly. She nodded, her finger tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Sophie didn't stay long. After finishing her coffee, she left. Mark was thrilled about her visit, thinking it was a good omen. Owen, that's Sophie's shun. You can tell she comes for money. If she becomes a regular, we've got a guaranteed whale. That night, I sang as usual. I didn't see Caleb or his crew in the audience. But Sophie was there again, sitting alone in a corner, nursing a cocktail and listening quietly. After a few songs, I took a break. She walked over with her glass. You're like a different person when you sing, she said. Oh, and what am I like normally? Normally, she thought for a moment and smiled. Like one of those gray rocks on the side of the road that nobody notices. But when you get on stage, you light up. That was a blunt comparison. I forced a smile, probably because there are lights on me. For the next few days, Sophie came by almost every night, sometimes with friends, but mostly alone. She stopped just listening and would come over to chat for a bit during my breaks, asking trivial questions. What movies I liked, what I did besides singing. I gave her vague answers. Watch movies, sleep, nothing special. One night, we closed up early. Mark took off, and I stayed behind to lock up. It was a little chilly. I was leaning against the door, smoking a cigarette to wake myself up, when a car slid silently to the curb. The window rolled down. It was Sophie. Still here? She asked. Just about to leave, I said, taking a drag. Want a ride? No thanks, I'm just a few blocks away. She didn't insist, but she didn't drive away either. She just sat there, watching me. The atmosphere was a little strange. I tried to break the silence. You come here every day. Aren't you sick of it? I'll stop coming when I'm sick of it, she replied flatly. You sing the same few songs over and over. You should be the one who's sick of it. They're the only ones I know. Write some new ones, she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I laughed. You think writing a song is like baking bread? Just pop in the oven. Is it that hard for you? Her gaze was direct, the streetlight glinting in her eyes. I stubbed out my cigarette. I'm heading out. She finally started the car. Just before she pulled away, she said, Owen, you keep a lot of things hidden, don't you? The car merged into the traffic. I stood there, thinking about what she'd said. Hidden things? What was I hiding? The biggest thing was that I was from another world, but how could I ever tell anyone that? After 2 months, the bar had covered its losses and cleared a profit of $40,000. Mark, in a grand gesture, gave me $30,000 of it. He said the bar would have gone under without me, and his conscience wouldn't let him take the lion's share. He also took me to the biggest spa and bathhouse in the city. The lobby was all gold and glitter, so bright it hurt your eyes. Mark was clearly a regular, navigating the place like a pro. We soaked in a large pool, the steam making me drowsy. Laughter came from the adjacent pool. It sounded like they were having some kind of contest. Great. Caleb was there too. The moment Caleb stood up, everyone in the vicinity sucked in a breath. I thought Hercules was the pinnacle of mankind, but this guy, who is this champion? On the way out, Mark was still marveling. Damn, I thought we were doing pretty well for ourselves, but you just can't compare. I didn't bother responding. My mind was still replaying the glittering lobby and the commotion from the next pool over. That Caleb guy, he really was the author's golden boy. Top-tier hardware, fully loaded. A couple of days later, Sophie didn't show up at the bar. Mark grumbled about our big spender having disappeared. I, for one, was enjoying the peace. That night after my set, a strange man found me backstage. He handed me a business card, said he was from some record label, and wanted to talk about a deal. I gave him a non-committal answer and didn't think much of it. When I walked out the back door of the bar, a figure was standing at the mouth of the alley. It was Sophie. She was dressed down today, canvas sneakers, jeans, looking like a college student. How'd it go? She asked. How'd what go? The guy from Starbound Entertainment. Didn't he just talk to you? I paused. How did you know? I sent him, she said with a sly smile. I thought it was a waste for you to be cooped up in this little bar. An inexplicable discomfort settled in my gut. You're being nosy. She wasn't offended. She walked over and fell in a step beside me as we headed toward the main street. Consider it a favor returned. What favor do I owe you? You sing for me. You put me in a good mood. That counts. I ignored the comment about favors, pulling out my pack of cigarettes and tapping one out. The wind in the alley was strong, and it took me a few tries to get my lighter to catch. So starbound. What are you thinking? She asked, unfazed by my cold shoulder. Not thinking about it, I said, exhaling a cloud of smoke. Sophie didn't say anything else, just stood under the streetlight watching me. The wind blew the smoke back into her face. She didn't flinch, just squinted her eyes and smiled. You're no fun at all, she said. Then she waved and got in her car. In the book, Sophie was just a background character, a prop to serve as the main character's best friend. Her personality and family background were barely mentioned. I never expected to get so involved with her. Meanwhile, life was just peachy every day for the main character, Caleb, who continued to provide his readers with plenty of fan service. I walked home slowly, turning things over in my mind. That Sophie girl was more complicated than she let on. There had to be a reason she was getting close to me, and it wasn't just to hear me sing. The people from Starbound came a few more times, their offers getting better with each visit. I never budged. Mark was practically jumping out of his skin, calling me a blockhead for not seizing the opportunity. I didn't explain myself. I knew I didn't have any magic cheat codes. If I signed a deal, I'd just end up embarrassing myself when I couldn't produce any more hits. Sophie still came around, sometimes with friends, sometimes alone. She didn't bring up the record deal anymore. She just listened to the music, occasionally handing me a glass of water after a set and making small talk about anything and everything. I found that more comfortable. She also got my number. One night, Sophie called me out of the blue. Come get me. Then she gave me an address, a hotel. Her voice sounded strange, like she was drunk. When I got to the hotel, Sophie was huddled alone in a corner of the room. Quick, help me. Before I could ask how, she lunged at me. She was like a wildfire, fierce and consuming. The bedroom, the balcony, the bathroom. When I woke up in the hotel the next morning, Sophie was gone. A piece of paper was on the nightstand with 2 words written on it. Thanks. I crumpled the note in my hand and fell back on a bed. Totally worth it. If there was a next time, I was definitely leaving another comment. Put me in again, coach. 3 days later, Sophie reappeared at the bar. She was wearing a little black dress, sitting in her usual spot as if nothing had happened. After my set, I went to her table. She handed me a glass of ice water. Your voice is a little hoarse. Tired yourself out the other night. I took a sip, not answering. About the other day, she continued, thanks. I put the glass down and looked at her. Thank for what? What exactly happened that night? Sophie raised an eyebrow. What's this? Worried about me? She swirled the drink in her glass, her eyes glancing toward the stage. Damien invited Isabella and me to dinner that night. I didn't think he'd be stupid enough to try and drug both of us at the same time. Lucky for me, I was suspicious and didn't drink my wine. The rest, you already know. Sophie didn't elaborate any further on that night, and I didn't ask. She still came to the bar regularly, but something felt different. The way she looked at me now had less curiosity and more. Something else. Mark, ever the sly observer, sidled up to me. Owen, are you and Miss Sophie? A thing. I shoved him. A thing with your mom. Get back to work. He dodged me with a smirk. Deny it all you want. The way she looks at you now, man, it's intense. I ignored him and went back to wiping down glasses. My mind was preoccupied with how I was going to get back to my own world. What if I got serious with Sophie and then suddenly disappeared? A few nights later, after the bar closed, I was cleaning up when Sophie's car pulled up outside again. She rolled down the window. Get in. I'm taking you somewhere. I hesitated for a second, then opened the door and got in. She didn't speak, just drove aimlessly through the city. Finally, she parked in front of an abandoned stadium. What are we doing here? I asked. Listening to music. She magically produced 2 cans of beer and tossed one to me. The stadium was empty, and the acoustics made everything echo. She walked to the center of the field and yelled at the top of her lungs. Owen is a bastard. The echo came back in waves. Bastard. Starred. Art. I took a swig of beer. You're insane. She laughed, walking back over to me, her eyes sparkling. About that night. Aren't you going to say anything? Like, for example, taking some responsibility. She was half joking, half serious. I looked at her. Miss Shun, are you messing with me? What if I am? She moved a little closer. Is that not allowed? There was a hole in the stadium's roof. Moonlight streamed down, illuminating her face. I could smell her perfume. It was faint and pleasant. She told me Damien had taken a trip to Thailand and now went by the name Daisy. Apparently, Daisy held a grudge and tried to ambush Caleb one night. He was caught on the spot, and the consequences were brutal. It had been a few days, and rumor was he still couldn't get out of bed. This world was just like the novel. No cops, just vigilante justice. Sophie started asking me out frequently. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the more invested I got, the more it would hurt when I left. So I kept turning her down. She asked me to hang out. I said I was busy. She asked me to get barbecue. I said I was busy. She asked me why Malcolm Gladwell's books were so compelling, and I ended up on the phone with her for an hour. Forget it. This is too hard to explain online. I'm coming over. You decide what we're having for dinner. And just like that, after that day, my relationship with Sophie became this undefined, ambiguous thing. She didn't just come to the bar to listen to me sing anymore. Sometimes she'd wait for me to get off work, and we'd go for a late-night bite. Mark was green with envy, saying I'd won the lottery. I didn't have the heart to tell him her dad was one of the most famous entrepreneurs in the state. If he knew, the envy might actually kill him. Sophie started showing up at my apartment all the time, like a goddess slumming it with the mortals. She seemed to treat the place like a second home. I didn't stop her, mainly because it was useless to try. She just let herself in with a key she'd somehow acquired, carrying groceries from Whole Foods and declaring she was going to improve my diet. Mark came over once and saw her frying eggs on my t-shirt and nothing else. His jaw nearly hit the floor. One night, the creaky old sofa finally fell silent. I held Sophie in my arms. Before I could fall asleep, she kicked me lightly. Look, Victoria is trending. I leaned over to see her phone. Julian's business ventures overseas had failed, and he'd come back to play the sympathy card and try to squeeze some money out of Victoria. But she wasn't interested in getting back together. So he resorted to dirty tricks, framing and slandering her new husband, Ethan. He even manipulated the kids into helping him drive Ethan away. In the chaos, Victoria had signed what she thought was a routine business paper, but it was actually divorce papers from Ethan. When she finally found out, she went into full-on grovel and win-him-back mode. When Julian saw his plan had failed, he tried to steal Victoria's jewelry to cover his debts. He tripped the alarm and nearly got himself arrested. Victoria, unable to win Ethan back, turned all her rage on Julian, hiring people to teach him a lesson. Julian, seething with anger, attacked Victoria in broad daylight with the weapon of choice for all low-budget criminals, a fruit knife. Now, Julian had been arrested by police who had just happened to appear on the scene, and Victoria was in the hospital. The reports said she might never be able to have children again. After all that, Ethan only came back to see her once. He left her with a simple "I don't love you anymore," and went straight back to his quiet life in Miami. What a whirlwind of emotional drama. Sophie rested her chin on my shoulder. "TSK, I told you they wouldn't last," she commented, her tone detached. "You don't seem surprised at all," I said, scrolling through the news. "This kind of stuff happens all the time in my circle. Stand-in lovers, groveling exes, drama with the first wife. It's standard." She reached over, took the phone, and locked it. "Stop reading that trash. Let's go another round." With that, Sophie rolled over and pressed her body against mine. After a busy night, Sophie was finally still, lying motionless in bed. Her breathing evened out. She seemed to be asleep. I could see her long eyelashes trembling, casting tiny shadows on her cheeks. In that moment, I thought maybe being stuck in a book wasn't so bad after all. Sophie was pregnant. The 2 lines on the pregnancy test appeared while we were having coffee and donuts. She slapped the test stick down on the greasy plastic table. The sound was small, but sharp. Well, a mouthful of coffee went down the wrong pipe, and I coughed until I was seeing stars. She calmly tore off a piece of a donut, waiting for me to recover. "So," she said, "what are we going to do?" I was torn. I wasn't a native of this world. What if I just disappeared one day? What would happen to Sophie and the baby? I saw the warmth drain from Sophie's eyes, replaced by a chilling cold. "We're keeping it," I blurted out. Sophie stared at me for a few seconds, then broke into a smile and kicked me in the shin. Good answer. Her family's reaction was explosive. They descended upon our little bar like a SWAT team. Her father, dressed in a sharp suit, looked completely out of place sitting there. "Owen, is it? Mister?" Shun looked me up and down, his eyes like an x-ray machine. "What are your intentions?" "We're getting married," I said. "Married?" He scoffed. "With what? This dump?" "Dad!" Sophie burst through the door and stood in front of me protectively. "It's my choice." "Mister." Shun stared at me, then at his daughter. Finally, he threw a black credit card on the table. $5 million. "Lee, my daughter." I looked at the card but didn't move. Sophie, however, flew into a rage, grabbing the card and tried to snap it in half. I caught her hand, took the card, and faced her father. "Sir, I'm keeping the girl, and I'm keeping the money. We'll consider it a down payment on diapers for your grandchild." "Mister." Shun was stunned, probably not expecting me to have the guts to be a kept man with an attitude. He narrowed his eyes and studied me for a long moment, then let out a laugh of pure, frustrated anger. "Fine, you got balls, kid." He stormed out. Mark materialized from a corner. "On, dude. 5 million. Sophie wrapped her arm around mine and sniffed. "You passed the test." I waved my hand dismissively. All in a day's work. I rented a new 3-bedroom apartment, and Sophie officially moved in with me. I started to imagine a shameless, blissful life of domestic stability. But the more stable things became, the more terrified I was of waking up one day to find us separated by worlds. Her in the book, me outside of it. That was a fate worse than any star-crossed lovers. The bar's business boomed. Mark bought the adjacent storefront and expanded. I kept singing, stitching together new, original songs from my memory of music for my world. And damn, it worked surprisingly well. No wonder it was so easy for musicians to make money these days. Every single one of my cobbled-together originals was a massive hit. Sophie came to the bar every day, acting like the proprietress. Her morning sickness was severe. Often, I'd be in the middle of a song and see her clamp a hand over her mouth and run out. Mark asked me in private, "Owen, how's the shotgun wedding life treating you?" I kicked him. "Screw you. I'm genuinely in love." One night after closing, it was pouring rain. I was holding an umbrella over Sophie as we walked to her car. The street lights were dim, the sound of the rain a constant hiss. I saw Caleb's car parked at the corner of the street. The vibe inside was tense. Isabella and Chloe were both in there, and it looked like they were arguing. Caleb was stuck in the middle, his face a mask of irritation. The window was cracked open, and we caught snippets of their conversation. "Izzy, what right do you have to tell Caleb who he can or can't buy a purse for?" "Chloe, don't push your luck. Enough." Caleb's voice was a low growl. We hurried past without a second glance. Sophie leaned against me and whispered, "I heard Chloe's pregnant. Isabella is losing her mind." I just grunted in response. The drama in this book was relentless. Sophie's belly grew bigger by the day. Every night, I worried I would suddenly vanish. Her dad had softened his stance, occasionally sending over nutritional supplements, but he still refused to see me. The bar became our home base. I was busy taking care of a pregnant woman. Mark was busy expanding the business. He dumped his several million-dollar share of our windfall into the stock market, saying he was going to make a name for himself in finance. Through Sophie, we still heard updates about the other characters. Victoria had moved into the house across from Ethan's bed and breakfast with her kids. Meanwhile, Ethan had met a girl in Miami named Haley. It looked like Haley was going to be the one to finally help him move on. Nobody knew how Caleb resolved the situation with Isabella and Chloe, only that he'd recently invested in a new project and was often seen with a new female assistant. Daisy had vanished, with rumors saying he'd moved to Portland. These updates were like after-dinner snacks, consumed and forgotten. My focus was entirely on Sophie and our unborn child. One night, Sophie was curled up in my arms. "Owen," she said suddenly, "since you chose to have this baby, you're not getting away from me in this lifetime." She smiled, a look of pure triumph on her face. I stroked her hair and agreed wholeheartedly. In the middle of the night, I woke up and realized Sophie wasn't in bed. Panicked, I looked around, relieved to see I was still in her home. A faint light was coming from the study. I walked closer and saw a notebook on the desk that I'd never seen before. Curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up and opened it. This was the novel. The beginning was all about Caleb's story. Caleb's high school grades weren't the best. I can't believe it. Sophie was the author of this trashy romance, the one who'd created this whole world. No wonder she was so thirsty. I flipped a few more pages and finally saw my name. Owen, an insignificant background character. Just then, I heard the toilet flush. I quickly put the notebook back where I found it and scrambled back to bed. Sophie stood in the bedroom doorway for a moment, a cunning look on her face. Then she went back to the study and flipped to the last page. She began to write. Owen accidentally discovers the notebook on the desk. Poor Owen. He has no idea he's just a puppet in her hands. I kept my eyes closed, pretending to be asleep. I heard Sophie tiptoe back to bed, her body carrying the damp scent of the bathroom and a faint, unmistakable air of smugness. Outside, the siren of an ambulance wailed, growing closer and then fading away. This city was constantly writing news stories, and mine, it seemed, was just getting started.